Welcome, everybody, to this week's Legal Tech Week. It's our year-end edition. It's December 30th, 2022, and we're going to spend a little time today looking back at some of the top stories of the year and offer a few thoughts about what's likely to be coming down the pike over the next 12 months or so. I'm Bob Ambrogi. I have the blog Law Next and the podcast. I have the blog Law Sites and the podcast Law Next. Our panelists today, first of all, we have to extend a huge congratulations to Joe Patrice, who is now a father-to-be. So congratulations, Joe.
Yep, thank you, thank you. I guess that's my intro too.
That's your intro, yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, fair enough. And I'm Joe Patrice from Above the Law and Thinking Like a Lawyer podcast, which I guess hopefully you already knew, or else that congratulations, you don't really care all that much. But and I'm here in the office of our sibling blog Fashionista. It's not like Above the Law has had a weird decoration change. This is just our fashion blog.
I honestly thought you were in like a teenager's bedroom. I was very confused.
All I could think of was the British show Absolutely Fabulous,
Right. There's a lot of that energy with this blog, yeah.
Do you have a military blog too, or something like that?
We do.
Yeah. What are their offices?
Medical.
Like?
I actually don't know if they have physical offices anymore, although they do have an office space in the Pentagon, I know, when they're working there.
Oh, that's cool. All right. Well, and Steve Embry, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Steve Embry. I write the blog Tech Law Crossroads, also chair of the ABA Law Practice Division for this year. And I do not have an interesting background, and I am not affiliated with any organization that has, say, an office in the Pentagon. But, I do what I can.
Sounds good. And Gina Grady.
I'm Gina Graham, the author and editor of the Dewey B Strategic blog, which focuses on research and KM technologies. And I also write for the Legal Tech Hub website.
And last but not least, Stephanie.
And I can say I have a grandchild on the way.
Oh, congratulations.
I have nothing on the way. I'm Stephanie Wilkins, editor-in-chief of Legal Tech News at ALM. And today I am up in the Catskills in this weirdly massive Airbnb that is basically like an art gallery and has a sculpture garden, and it's very strange, but I'm taking a break from that to see all of you.
Oh, nice. And do they have like a wild and crazy New Year's Eve blowout there?
We just got here last night and we were like, what? They definitely undersold the Airbnb listing, which is rare. Usually they oversell. I was like, I need to do your PR because this place is crazy.
Oh, nice.
And there's like a vineyard on it. I'm very unclear, but yeah. Yeah. But legal tech, yay.
All right. Well, so we want to talk about the top stories of the year. I don't know whether to start or end with ChatGPT. I guess we were just talking about this before we went on, because some of us listed that as a top story of the year. Some of us listed it as a top story of next year, or likely to be a top story of next year. But maybe we can talk about that a little bit and get our thoughts. I mean, I think, Steve, you're one of the people I think who kind of put it down as a top story of this year. What were you thinking there?
Well, I mean, it just seemed to be a door opening into a completely new paradigm for legal tech, where you can, it sort of was like the move to online legal research years ago. I mean, you used to have to go to the office and look in the books, and then all of a sudden you couldn't look in the books. You didn't have to look in the books. You could do it online, which meant you could work from home, which meant you didn't have to go to the office on Saturday, which meant the office didn't need the library. And so all these things just went on and on and on and on. And as I was thinking about it, I was just wondering whether this development and what this AI tool and similar AI tools could do in the future. And it just seemed to be sort of a milestone development in a lot of ways. I mean, I just, I sort of, most of what lawyers do is based on written work. for better or worse, or for more or less. And now that mainstream body of time, particularly for those lawyers that bill by the hour, can be so short-circuited. I could very easily see, taking 100 depositions and downloading into the program and then asking the program to create a statement of facts based upon, some guideposts that you gave it, and churning out something in a matter of minutes that used to take hours, weeks, days, whatever you have. So to me, that was a significant milestone that, yes, it could lead to a lot of things next year and the year after that and whatever. But to me, it seemed like a pretty big development in legal that could affect a lot of things. So that's why I had it as one of the top stories. Actually, I didn't write the story. Stephanie and Joe and others and Jane all wrote stories, and I just copied from it.
Well, I also agree that there has been a development in several legal products. Like Lexis did their fact. Now I'm blanking on it. Their new fact searching product. Westlaw did Precision, and
Fact and Issue Finder.
yeah, Fact and Issue Finder. Thank you, Stephanie.
Yeah.
And then, Case Text has All Search, which I understand can work on all different kinds of text. So there's definitely already some momentum building. I think in terms of legal research, though, the challenge will be, because I think lawyers already have anxiety about whether associates know what they're doing. And when the more associates simply get presented with an answer, it's going to have to be tied back to a precedent. I mean, I think we're really in danger of people thinking it's going to give all kinds of legal research like a gloss of simplicity that really isn't there. There still needs to be some vetting and authenticating and verification, even though technology is going to be spewing out more and more answers.
Yeah, you're right, Gene. I was just thinking as you were talking back in the days when I would write briefs that, there's always a sort of a significant time and energy associated with doing these statement of facts. And a lot of the facts are just, not even in dispute. You just have to have a citation to them or something, and they just have to be churned out on the paper. And that was always time consuming. Yes, applying the law to those facts and picking out the right facts is a human task. But boy, if I could have had something that would just spit out sort of just regurgitated these sort of mundane facts that have to be present on the paper without a lot of work, that would be, wow, that'd be great.
Well, I don't know if anybody saw the post this week from Dan Katz and Michael Bomarito that they just published a law review article, I guess, on SSRN entitled "GPT Takes the Bar Exam."
Yes,
And,
I was thinking of that.
I haven't read the full article, but the abstract, according to the abstract, the GPT was able to pass at least the evidence and torts sections of the bar exam.
It was like any of the short answer or essay ones, right? Was that right? I
think so. I didn't read the full.
I
I didn't read the full. I'm even looking at the abstract is a little bit too abstract for me. It talks about this. We find that the hyperparameter optimization and prompt engineering positively impacted GPT 3.50 shot performance. I don't know what that means. So
yeah, I have that tab open to read because I saw that too. But yeah.
But I mean, I think I was on the fence between whether this is a 2022 story or a 2023 story, and I fell down on the side of saying this is going to be huge at legal in the coming year. I really think it is. I mean, I think we have reached a turning point here, and already any number of companies are developing law-specific products around this technology, but we haven't seen them yet. And so to any great extent and little, playing around with some little things, but we haven't really seen anything major. we do have, I talked recently about Harvey. I think a couple of us wrote about Harvey, and it's one where I did see a demo of it, but they haven't publicly released the demo of it yet, and it's very cool. And if the public release ends up being, what I saw or better, that's just one product that I think is going to be really a game changer, potentially a game changer in how lawyers do stuff.
I guess the question is legal research going to go the way of penmanship and spelling? I mean, is it not going to be a core skill anymore?
Well, I mean,
Question.
we keep saying
Cursive.
research, but what about
with
drafting?
cursive.
Yeah, like I feel like a lot of the basic contracts and things like that even you just get, like a lot of companies have built themselves around like, oh, we'll handle all your NDAs, we'll handle all your whatever, because it's rote. Do you even need that anymore? See, I also fell down on this being a next year thing, even though like I am obsessed with generative AI in general. And if Nikki were here, she and I, like we've talked about this, but pure technology wise, I don't see a bigger thing that's going to change 2023 personally. I think that's why I fell down on it being a future story, even though I'm obsessed with it about 2022 also. But yeah, I really just think it, like you were saying, it could eliminate a lot of the core skills that even, not that long ago we came up having to know.
Yeah, I mean, I think you raise a great point with the transactional stuff. When we talk, we started this by talking about briefs because I think we have kind of come at it from a litigation background and legal research and such, but it's going to be replacing the transactional work that is rote, that is the same thing over and over. To the extent there's any decision making, it's going to spit out, here are the three options you could use in this situation, and you just choose one of the three. It's going to be that kind of a game, and pretty soon, I think that's going to happen. The getting it into the litigation world is going to take longer. It's going to take, I think it won't really work in the litigation world until we reach a point where it interfaces with something else. It needs to be in that situation where it can interface with some of those cool features that we've seen Lexis come up with, where it can go through and say, oh, you're in front of this judge with this issue. These are the 8 cases that she cites whenever she's heard these and whatever, and what she thinks about them. And when it can plug into that and come back with, okay, here's what you are going to be talking about, maybe that'll be useful. But until it can play well with those sorts of analytics, I don't think it's going to be a thing in litigation.
But I think they are working on that. I think that
I'm sure they are.
I mean, like even Compose was already, enabling lawyers to draft motions. So I think we are further along. I think everybody's hiding their cards. That's what I think. I think we're going to see things that people aren't talking about yet.
Right. Well, I mean, because we're living in a GPT-3 world, or arguably 3.5 with ChatGPT. GPT-4 is going to be next, and then 5. And like when I had conversations for my article, the people in the know are just like, you have no idea what's coming. Not only will it be like this ChatGPT is exponentially stronger than anything we've seen before. But like the whole idea going forward, you were saying like on the litigation side, is that once you sort of get these tools and you can individually train your own models on within, say, all your firm documents and not just the general legal to differentiate, like, the Patrice law firm writes in this way and train it on all your briefs as opposed to the Wilkins law firm. That's when it can really be more powerful on the things that are still kind of routine, but less rote,
Except,
and I think,
can you imagine the fights when lawyers say, I don't want his briefs training the search engine?
Yeah. So just to go back to defend my original point, why I think it was a story this year, because to me, it's very important that I be right and you guys be wrong.
We can just put the question to ChatGPT and see what it says.
Particularly when it comes to how many angels are dancing on the head of a pen, it doesn't make any difference. And then my way of thinking about it, is sort of follow up on Stephanie and Joe's point. I don't know exactly where this is going to go next year. I mean, there's going to be some fundamental changes and some fundamental disruptions, but predicting where and how at this point, it's like when Lexis first came out with online legal research, who would have thought we wouldn't have libraries anymore. Who would have thought we would be working in the cloud? Yet you can sort of connect those dots backwards. And so that's why I stuck it in this year's story, because here and now it's a big development. Where it ends up, who knows? And that's why I'm right and you're all wrong.
Well,
Yeah.
but I also think it's going to have a profound impact on staffing. I mean, what is it going to do to associate classes? I mean, because we're talking about both on the litigation side and the transactional side, and the work that associates get trained on is the work that's going away.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Yeah,
the
and of course
optimist
the
side
other-
of me, which doesn't exist. If it did, I probably wouldn't have quit Big Law. But if the optimist side of me would be, then we can let those associates do actual work rather than like using them as billing machines for garbage. But that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
The other
Well,
thing I
that-
wonder about too with
Oh.
this is the potential impact on the judiciary and, you know, clerkships, because a lot of what law clerks do for judges is doing what this AI will do. And so,
Right.
you know, we may end up with our Supreme Court opinions being written by chat.
And that's
No.
actually,
That
that's
could be
actually
preferable.
a really
Which might
interesting.
be better.
That could be a good thing.
But I can think about that, like when we were just saying you could train it in, say, the voice of a different firm, but that's even a more specific. Like it's if you put in every, you know, Ginsburg opinion ever, you could train it to write an opinion in the voice of Ginsburg, more so like as a single person. Like that's actually really interesting to me.
So
Yeah.
in the future, I could have my blog post to be written in the voice of Bob Ambrosia, and you know, I could make a lot of money doing that, because it would be really good.
If only I made a lot of money doing that. But Joe, what you're trying to say something, or?
Oh, I was just going to say, as far as the training aspect, it's a problem, but it's a problem that's been going on in a bunch of areas for a while, right? Because I'm one of those folks who feel like I learned a lot of how not to do things by discovery, just reading bunches of documents and learning what was and wasn't good, and all that's gone now. That all gets handled before an associate ever even touches the thing. So I feel like, I don't know. I worry that training, I worry about training. I have kind of hope that they will come up with new ways of training around all of these things. But you know, my brain thinks you have to have some experiential work with it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and that adds into, not to change topics, I'm sure we'll get there, that compounded on top of the remote work aspect where you don't get face-to-face training.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing I just keep thinking about with this is what's the even longer term future, because the companies that I've talked to so far that are building legal products around this seem to be going out of their way to make the point that they're building products for lawyers to help them, you know, work more efficiently, you know, get a start on drafting a document or get a start on research, but there still has to be that human component in there. But at what point does this AI get so sophisticated that you're basically getting rid of the middleman, the lawyer, in terms of delivering legal advice to the consumer? I mean, this was the threat, you know, years ago when the New York Times said robots are replacing humans in legal work. At that point, it really wasn't true, but it seems like it could be true at some point.
Well, and this came up.
Bar
Go ahead.
associations.
Go ahead. Well, no, this came up also, like David Horgan mentioned it a little bit in our relativity panel, and he had written an article before I got to LTN about whether or not technology can engage in the unauthorized practice of law when people try to use it for things like that. And it's an issue that has just started to come up. So, I mean, that could be a bigger deal if it really goes down that road.
Yeah. I noticed some people are posting questions in the Q&A and some are posting in the chat. I was wondering, I hope the chat's working okay. So we've had a couple of times on the show where it wasn't working right, but it seems like it is, I think. But either way, it might be easier if you post questions into the chat or comments into the chat for us to see them there. Well, I don't think, Steve, I don't think anybody's saying you're wrong. I think we're all saying it's a little bit of like, do we come down on December 30th, or do we come down on January 1st in terms of where this is a big issue? And it's clearly a big issue. It's clearly something everybody's already talking about. And it's just going to get bigger in the year ahead. So we'll give you credit for pegging it first.
All right, fair enough.
I mean, New Year's Eve is such a false construct. Like, come on. It's
Yeah.
just the big thing right now.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking, isn't the ultimate determiner of what it means the profits per partner? Because at the end of the day, partners are going to figure out, how does all of this affect revenue? And of having, one or two associates per law firm, drastically explodes revenue, that's where it's going to go.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, what were some other top stories of the year? Joe, do you one of the picks you had, Joe, I think the main pick you had for a top story was actually another one that I was kind of wrestling with as identifying as a top story. So
which one
you
is
want
that?
to talk about that?
Which one? You said what?
Well, the conferences.
Oh, conferences. Okay, yes.
Return to full-fledged conferences. Yeah.
Yeah, so we went back to conferences. So that was cool. And obviously we'd had some stuff pop up over the course of the pandemic here and there, but this was the first year of like real honest conferences all the way through. We got to see everybody show their, throw off some rust and come back. It was very interesting. I think it's safe to say that, we enjoy going to these things because we get whatever the opposite of microdosing is, we get to have like the full fire hose.
I was going to say fire hosing is exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, we get access to the full fire hose of news. And so that's very great. And, we see it from different perspectives because I think as much as some conferences might want to be it, no conference is all things to all people. So we get different angles at different shows. So that was very exciting too. It's gonna be a while till everybody gets everything right again. I know, Bob, you wrote an article about one of our favorite shows kind of being a little off its game. I wrote an article about one of the shows where we learn a lot being less than accommodating. But we've had experiences throughout the year as people kind of adapt to a new world. They get, they still doing some hybridization here and there. But it's nice to be getting back to in person. And so, yeah, I thought that was a big story in the tech world because, people have to get back to marketing themselves to live human beings, which they haven't been for a couple of years. And, that changes how you market.
Yeah, it felt good. It was just a return to normalcy as well. It was good to be with human beings in the same room live at the same time and having drinks and talking and conversations and everything else.
And by the same room, I mean a very, very tiny, dingy room far away from any of the programming at some of those conferences. Or one.
With only tea and
conference
water.
are you talking about, Joe?
I'll be out at the Consumer Electronics Show next week, which is one of the largest shows, and they are certainly acting as if it is going to be just like it was in 2019. It's an international show, and there's no. They say, well, you probably should get yourself tested before you come, but only if you want to, kind of thing. So I'm really interested to see how it all sort of plays out next week.
And Steve says the press room there has 3 full meals a day, and they give the press special access to the exhibit hall.
That's true. And we get, not only do we get tea and water in the press room, we get coffee and Cokes too.
Wow. Unheard of.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know what else there is to say about conferences other than it was good to be back and look forward to many more. It's already shaping up to be a busy conference here in 2023 for all of us, I'm sure. Jean, what did you have for?
Well, I had one thing, but I sort of pivoted. I think related to what
you
Joe
want to explain
just
why
said,
or not? That's okay.
I think back to the office probably was the biggest
No, yeah.
story, because lawyers are struggling with the real estate versus culture versus retaining young associates. No one is comfortable where they have come down on. Young lawyers in general want to be at home. Older lawyers generally want to be in the office. And I think law firms are not going to make the hard choice until they have a real estate decision to make. And then I think as soon as they are able to give up, 20,000, or 100,000 square feet in a downtown, they're gonna then opt for the wonders of total remote work. But I know of at least one very large law firm that has gone 100% remote, and that's like 180 degrees from where they were before the pandemic. So yeah, I think that has to be the biggest change, that firms now have to struggle with the internal organizational training, culture, technology issues related to the return to office.
Yeah, and I'll jump on that too. Because I think that's right. And I want to also say that there's I think maybe to almost make it a mini prediction on this subject, I feel like the next challenge is the recognition that there is that working from home during a pandemic and working from home post-pandemic are two very different things, and everyone's treating them the same. And that's kind of a problem
that's a good point.
Because I think I see a lot of these firms who are trying to deal with how they're going to balance all this, and they just don't understand what the issue is. They're acting like the issue was people liked being at home as opposed to people liked flexibility. During the lockdown, they liked minimizing exposure. So it didn't matter if they came in on 3 set days or 3 days throughout the week. But now we're in a post-pandemic world, and now the whole argument is flexibility. It is the ability for me to say I work better on Mondays and Sundays, so that's when I'm coming in. That change is going to be the struggle for the next year.
And I absolutely agree, because I know there are some people out there that just like being in the office all the time, and that is fine. But I don't mind going in sometimes, but I actually, once you tell me exactly which days I have to go in, that's when I start being why is Thursday the day?
Yeah, I was, once again, I guess I'm sort of back asswards, because instead of having that as a key story, I had that as a prediction. But I think this coming year we're going to see how that battleground really plays out, because
maybe you just know something we don't know. You just
no, I doubt. But it's kind of ironic, because we have firms at this point starting to say to associates, we want you here, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, but not the other days, because we want you here so you can get trained and have these little interpersonal contacts with partners. But many of the partners who don't have to do what they're told necessarily are saying, screw you, I'm going to work from my beach house, and I have to meet with my associates in the office. They can be in the office and I'll be at the beach house. So it's like this sort of very weird sort of situation where the rules, like often in law firms, the rules are one set of rules for one group of people and one set of rules for another, for a reason that doesn't really fit with why you're looking at the rules to begin with. But I do think it's that issue is going to play out, and it's gonna be a real battle, I think, over the next year between those competing interests. And Joe, you're right, it is flexibility. It's nothing but flexibility. And I don't know. Plus you've got, as Gene put it, all these big leases that are often long-term. So, management has to justify having all this office space for some period of time, and then all of a sudden they don't have to justify it, and it can get very weird.
and you can't take advantage of the whole hoteling concept if you say 100% has to come in on Tuesday.
Yeah.
The whole point, it's just every bit of this is dumb, and unfortunately it's becoming an issue. We've already now heard of people getting their bonuses dinged because a firm said, "Oh, we determined you were insufficiently in the office."
I mean, that is the most big law thing to ever be law.
People being associates, and then at the same token, you see the same firms going out and bringing in a lateral partner who may be on the other side of the country, who doesn't have to move, but has a big book of business that can control. Oh yeah, you don't have to come. No, you can work on just from there. So what are we doing?
I'm curious what you all think about, so you have layoffs starting to happen, whether or not there's more of them or not. But even if you have a coolie, is that enough of a fear factor for firms to hold over the heads of people to be like, yeah, sure, try to negotiate based on wanting flexibility?
I think it's going to, like a lot of things in big law firms, it's going to be the unspoken rule. And I think associates are already starting to feel that. The unspoken assumption is that you will be in the office 4, maybe 5 days a week, whether you need to be or not. And thinking back to when I was an associate, I think that's how I would have perceived it. If I want to become a partner, I'm not going to jeopardize my partnership chances or my bonus chances, just to work at home, even though I want to work at home. But I'll come to the office even though the firm says you don't have to.
I mean, I had no remote work option technically. Did you, Joe?
No, we didn't really need to. There was no rule that you had to be in, but yeah, we always were in. Well, I mean, I always had enough work that I had to be there anyway. So,
and we also didn't have quite the remote tech capabilities. You had that whole
also true.
Yeah, but still,
we had Blackberries.
But FaceTime was such a huge thing that
Although when I was a young partner, I worked at home a lot. And I was with a reasonably sized firm, but I also had a pretty big book of business at the time, so I guess I could get away with it. Is the best way.
So who was going to say anything?
Yeah, I mean, that's always this kind of funky thing about law firms. Is you've got the book of business, you more or less can do what you want, and that's been true for years and years. You can be a hero or you can be a villain. It doesn't matter. The bigger the book of business, the more you can get away with.
Oh, none of these rules are going to apply to partners in any way, shape, or form. It's only going to be, even back when I just said you couldn't work remotely, I worked for a partner who worked from his beach house in St. Thomas all the time. It didn't apply to him,
Right.
Yeah, right. I used to work from my office in St. Thomas all the time too, but I was living in St. Thomas at the time.
Did I work for you, Bob? And I don't remember.
So showing off again. What was that conference you attended, Bob? That no one else
I was going to say,
to?
Jean, one of my big predictions for next year is that Bob
Which
will
of the
be
many?
the only one invited to conferences and rub it in our faces.
On that, but just on the point, I just noticing this comment from Dave Rakowski in the chat about, and yet they wonder why people start their own firms. I mean, I think that's something that in all this talk about how larger firms are treating their staff and associates, we're not addressing the fact that one clear outcome of the pandemic has been that it's probably made it easier than ever to start your own firm and do well with starting your own firm, or at least go to a small firm and have more options with a small firm, both in terms of how you work. Because I think it's really clear for a lot of smaller firms that the clients don't really care if you have an office anymore. It's okay if you're working out of your basement or your family room or wherever else. And the options for getting clients, because the world has gone so virtual, are greater than ever. And there's so many services like the Up Councils of the world and whatever, where you can get work, either working directly for clients or working for other lawyers. That, the fear factor for people who are worried about getting booted out of big firms are, it's just driven by the sort of the mega salaries, I guess, of big firms. But you can start a smaller firm. And you can make a pretty decent salary and have a more rational work-life balance and be in control of your own fate to some extent.
And I would say the same sort of considerations are true we were just talking about the marketing and the sales front, where people, once conferences went away, if you were someone who just felt comfortable just emailing people all day long, you could market. Because there are different marketing skills, right? We all know those people that are face-to-face can close any deal. And then there are people that they just work better behind the scenes. So I feel like in some ways it made marketing easier for some people that could just go off on their own. Same sort of idea as the going off on your own as a lawyer.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go on to the next topic, whatever that might be. Now, Stephanie, I think we already did your top topic of the year insofar as, is that right? Did we do that?
No, you did my
No.
prediction was
Oh, no, we
ChatGPT.
didn't do your top. Yeah, good. Okay, what's yours?
It was, I mean, I guess it's kind of legal tech. It's legal tech adjacent. It's e-discovery. It was the whole Alex Jones cell phone debacle.
That passes. Yep.
Yeah. I don't know what else I can say about it that hasn't really been said because it was such a mind-blowing thing. But yeah, I guess people are learning Dropbox is not their friend, or you should maybe learn how to use basic technologies like Dropbox. We saw that twice this year. I thought that was, I don't know, just in terms of a big story, I thought that was one.
Well, I think it's notable. It also because it happened in what happens to be the 10th anniversary of the adoption of the duty of tech competence for lawyers. So here we are, 10 years into the adoption of that duty, and lawyers are still pulling off inadvertent disclosures and stupid email tricks and all sorts of other things like that, because there's still just this surprising lack of competence or laziness about being competent with regard to technology.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I might agree on the laziness, because like they now know they're supposed to be competent, so they're so intent on learning like all these intricate e-discovery tools are actually legal tech tools. Then when it comes to things like Dropbox, they're like, I don't have time. I'm sure this is fine. Because like we're not seeing the mistakes with sophisticated legal technology. We're seeing it with things that I use to send pictures to my cousin,
Right.
We talked about this a couple episodes ago, right? The My Case study, which had among its findings, the one that jumped out at a lot of us was that so many lawyers are relying on standard retail solutions for legal tasks, like the Dropboxes and like basic Word and stuff like that, when there are better legal crafted options out there. So yeah, I feel like this story fits right in with
and that's a bit of a pandemic effect too, right? Where like people scrambled to use whatever they could do when everyone went remote, and then 2 or 3 years later they're still using these tools that were not meant for legal, when either they existed beforehand or they've been developed since then.
But even then, I mean, like what's one of the most common mistakes is redaction, failure to redact a document properly. And then it gets filed, the classic stories, it gets filed on Pacer and somebody downloads it from Pacer and, realizes it wasn't properly redacted and therefore they can see everything that was in the document. And a lot of people are probably just using Adobe, which is I guess you can call it a consumer product. I don't know if you call it a legal tech product per se, but it's not hard. It just isn't very hard to redact a document properly in Adobe, or if you're using any kind of litigation prep software or whatever else. It's just built right into it. So it just does seem like it's laziness or something with regard to this.
Can I be
well, and it's very tempting to use those sort of tools like Dropbox because they're so easy to use as compared to some of the legal tech products that you might have to click 2 or 3 times as opposed to one time. And lawyers get in a hurry. They bill by the hour. You can't bill by the hour for doing some of this stuff, so they do it the quickest way possible. And darn. Isn't that a screw up?
I was going to raise sort of a contrarian point of view, which is that at least in large law firms, the notion of the secretary has been decimated. And maybe there are certain tasks that actually would be better if they were delegated. Like the lawyer does the redaction, but somebody else double checks it to make sure it's been done right. I mean, I think, and I'm not alone. There are a number of people in large law firms where the secretarial role has been so minimized, and secretaries are supporting 22 lawyers, that lawyers end up doing so many small tasks that they're not really getting the right level of support for.
That's a good point, Jen. I was thinking as you were saying that, I think the title of the book was The Checklist Manifesto.
Oh yeah.
Where all these different companies and the medical field, they use checklists to make sure that there aren't mistakes. And, during all the time that I practiced law, I don't think I ever saw anything remotely similar or heard of anything remotely similar to a checklist. And then, no, I know how to do that. I go to it, kind of thing. But the statistics are phenomenal when you look at, industries that have begun using checklists, and the reduction in the number of errors is just striking.
And the article I just posted in the chat, I mean, it actually, we talked to a bunch of e-discovery people who've been doing this for a long time about the whole, what is the issue? Is it competence? Is it laziness? And it kind of comes down to a combination of both, and just lack of vigilance and time. Yeah. They're like, oh, especially the one in the January 6th committee one where they just forgot to deactivate the link. Oh, they were just too busy. Who, yeah. But it matters. I mean, it's a huge deal. It seems like a little thing, and it's a problem.
Yeah. Well, that's what
I'm going to be a contrarian to Gene's contrarianism, because I think that it is ultimately the lawyer's obligation to ensure that these things are done right and that the technology is used properly. And if the lawyer should be ensuring that there's somebody doing a second check or a third check. I mean, in any industry, in the journalism world, I mean, nothing gets published, not in the blogging world, unfortunately, but in the print world. I mean, nothing gets published without, at least one other editor, if not a copy editor and another editor, looking at something before it goes out.
So one, shots fired for some reason. Two, no. So maybe this is what the associates will do once ChatGPT replaces them all. It's going to be their job to make sure that things are redacted correctly.
Yeah.
Well, no, and I was going to say this is just a new iteration of, in the past, if a big mistake happened, partners would always try to blame someone below them anyway.
Yeah.
And ChatGPT can be trained to check the redactions, right?
I think you can train it. I mean, generative AI, even if it's not ChatGPT, I mean, we have music, we have art, we have music coming, we have art. I'm pretty sure this stuff you can train to do anything.
There's probably just some simple script you could write to make sure without even having to use AI. It's probably not that hard to check. But
yeah, it would just be search for every word. Anytime, if Stephanie was supposed to be redacted and everything, it could just be search every time. If you see Stephanie, it wasn't redacted. Yeah.
I saw a video about the next the GPT, but a little teaser for the GPT-4 thing. It was Megan or something like that. I saw. All right, the only one
that
person
movie
really
is both amazing and terrifying, and I'm absolutely gonna watch it, Joe. Yes. Yes.
All right. Well, one other topic I want to talk about, then we'll go around with maybe some more predictions. But my pick for the top story of the year was, I guess, the investment and M&A situation. The way I put it is kind of normalizing. It's been crazy the last couple of years in the legal tech world, and the investments were off the charts the last few years, and continuing to, we saw the sort of the hockey stick going up and up and up in terms of dollars being invested in companies, kind of absurd valuations on companies in some cases, all sorts of M&A activity. And I think coming into this year, everybody pretty much expected that to continue to be that way. And then, not that far into the year, things kind of pretty much settled down. And I use the term normalize only because I just keep seeing people in the investment world talk about it that way. There was speaking of that conference I went to that none of you went to, that TLTF summit. Dan O'Day, who's in the audience today, he was
ding,
there.
ding, ding. Sorry, we're going to ding every time you mention it now.
Where are our bingo cards? Bob went to a thing we weren't invited to.
That was a way some of the some of the investors who were there, who were speakers there, talked about it. This is really just a normalization, and that there's still money available for companies that deserve to get money, but maybe it's not so easy to get money if you're not able to show that you are in a position to get money. The story in the New York Times today on the sort of whole investment trend over the year, and that story also used that word, that this is this kind of a normalization of activity. So I don't know exactly what that means, but clearly activity continues, as Stephanie demonstrated about an hour ago. pulling out a story on Wolters Kluwer's acquisition of Della out of thin air at the last minute.
Yeah, Della AI, just why not end the year with a breaking story about an acquisition? Sure.
Yep. And we're still seeing investments, and there's still money being put into these companies. And I think it's going to be maybe a little bit more stable over the next year. But I do think that was kind of a big trend over the past year, was that the atmosphere, the landscape changed in terms of investment activity in the legal tech world.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
mean, I'm fascinated to see where the consolidation goes, because we have running, I won't name names, but anytime we have a crazy busy week, we have a running joke amongst our desks being oh, this of course will be the time that X acquires Y, pick two big names in anything. Because that's we'll inevitably get to
Thomson
that.
Reuters.
We know it's a joke, but is it really a joke? Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, predictions.
Well, wait.
Wait.
I think Gene had a thing real quick.
Gene had a thing. What about?
Well, I was just going to say that I do think one of the top issues that I wrote about last year was the decline in customer service in legal tech. And I had even done a survey on it. We started the year with I started the year with a blowout story on, West shutting down their 24/7 lawyer customer support. And then there was this sort of, they walked it back 2 or 3 days later. But I think in general, I also had done a survey of the people who read my blog, who are largely information service librarians and knowledge managers. And there was a consensus that customer support really was in decline. And I think part of the problem is that even large legal technology companies that charge premium amount, they're not cheap. They want basically to provide customer support like Google or Facebook, which means you never reach a human being. I think that's their goal to get there. And I don't think that really works in an environment where lawyers are, working on high stakes matters, and they need answers. They work 24/7. There's all sorts of reasons that the model, that the Facebook customer support model will not work in legal tech.
But Gene, do you think part of that decline in customer service may be related to the increased levels of investment? And by that I mean, as more dollars pour in from venture capitalists, they want to see financial returns, perhaps more than they are interested in customer service, which is kind of not an issue strictly for legal, but it's an issue across the board. And I've heard that theory from time to time, and I wonder whether there may be something to it.
It no doubt is a factor. I mean, another thing I heard, and I haven't confirmed this yet, is that one of the big companies let go their technologists who help people with APIs. Now, APIs have been a really hot topic. And why would you let those people go? And I think it does come down to somehow reporting to investors that you are streamlining the headcount. To me, it doesn't. I mean, I've been in the legal industry so long. I actually remember when vendors, like the old Westlaw, when it was a private company, they would say, we have a partnership with you, and they would make special adjustments based on the law firm's needs. No one wants to make any adjustments based on, no matter how many millions of dollars you're giving them, one size fits all.
Yeah. Well, there's certainly a lot of companies are just downsizing, and I know I'm sure several of us have written about it. I did a post last week where I tried to round up a couple of the companies that have done layoffs lately, but it's also hard to verify a lot of what you hear. I have found it's hard to verify a lot of what you hear in terms of layoffs, and there's if a layoff gets to a certain size, then they have to report it under the WARN Act or whatever, and you can find some documentation about it. But I think what some companies are doing is kind of a trickle layoff strategy where they lay people off over a series of months so they can avoid any kind of reporting activity. But we do know that some of these large companies, I mean, even Thomson Reuters is moving into a smaller facility after for years, having been in that massive facility in Egan for almost as long as I can remember. And now they're, who knows how many people or how many fewer people are working. And some of that could, again, be because of remote working and other issues. But these companies are getting smaller, and clearly support is going to be one thing that's going to suffer inevitably because of that.
But I feel like, Gene, also to your point about they used to cut deals with firms and whatever. I mean, at least when I was practicing, which was, I mean, you had Lexis and you had Westlaw, and they basically, those were the two, and they did research. Now they've all developed so many other technologies and companies within them that, like, sure, they're competitors in the research front, but they don't coexist as like Lexis versus Westlaw, in my mind, the way they did back then. So I don't feel like they need the deal. They have the incentive to cut you a deal on your research costs to outbid the other one as much.
Well, I'm not even saying cut a deal on the research costs. I'm saying give us support in the middle of the night when lawyers are working.
Yeah. All right. Well, we got a few minutes left here to go around and talk about some of our predictions for what's ahead for 2023, and we've kind of touched a little bit maybe on all of these. But Steve, since you were right about 2022, why don't we start with what you're predicting for 2023?
Well, I think I already talked about it. And
yeah, we did talk about
predictions.
Yeah,
there's going to be a war over remote work, associates versus partners, office space, all those kinds of things. And I think it's got to come to a head, because it's been kind of simmering along. And some firms have gone one way, other firms have gone another. Some firms have reversed course entirely, and sooner or later, there's going to have to be some decisions made, or maybe not. I mean, maybe it's a new normal. We won't. Policies will change overnight. Who knows? But I do think that will be a subject of much debate in the coming year.
Yeah. Gene, again, I realize we kind of talked about some of these, but you want to offer your prediction for the year?
I would predict there will be at least one major legal tech company will release a game-changing chat-like technology. I think something big is going to happen in 2023. And I also agree about changing the whole back to office thing. It's going to shake out. That'll be interesting to see where that lands.
Yeah. Stephanie, how about you?
Yeah, the GPT is my biggest. We're going to see huge stuff there. I don't know who's going to break it first, but I agree with Gene. But I do also agree with what you were saying, that I think we're going to see some really interesting things in the M&A space.
Oh, please tell me you have a prediction that's not GPT-3.
So what I think is going to happen is we are looking at an economic conditions that people are worried about, but not too worried. Things seem like they're coming around, but everyone's a little nervous, yada, yada. That said, we've seen some layoffs. Those layoffs tend to be firms that have been very, a big tech practice, your Gundersons and Coolies and stuff like that. So my prediction is that, and it may not come to fruition in 2023, but it's going to happen in 2023. I think we're going to have a new little clutch of legal tech entrepreneurs coming out now. We've got people who are seeing, whether they are being laid off or they're seeing that can happen in their kind of practice from big law, who have ideas and are smart and tech savvy and may not want to go back to that world. That's kind of the recipe for somebody to finally take the plunge and get into this stuff. So I think, out of that Cooley, Gunderson, so all the Silicon Valley little stealth layoffs and such that we're seeing are the next generation of idea makers.
Yep. And I was on the ChatGPT bandwagon as well in terms of my predictions for next year. I mean, I think exactly what Gene just said. We're clearly going to see somebody come through, and I would go even farther and say several somebodies, but at least one come through with some really interesting technology in a legal world built on ChatGPT or GPT-3 or GPT 3.5 or 4 or wherever we are at that point.
Megan.
Yeah. Megan. And I think it's really going to be a game changer, and I think we're going to see that.
I would add,
yeah.
I would add to that with a more bold
Yeah.
prediction than just GPT is big. I think one of those big players is going to be someone from a completely like nascent legal tech market. It's not going to be a US company or even like a British company. Someone's going to come out of somewhere and blow everyone away. That's my prediction.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would add, just sitting here thinking about it after listening to Joe, I would also add in terms of what could happen, a lot of law firms and a lot of partners have made a whole lot of money during the pandemic because demand has been extremely high and costs sort of by necessity have been reduced. But now we may be entering either a recessionary period of the economy in general, but certainly the signs seem to point to a reduction in demand for legal services, which is going to put a horrible strain on a lot of law firms and law firm management. Because God knows there's nothing worse than a partner who makes less money this year than last year. That partner is not happy and can perfectly capable of raising hell, particularly if there's more than one. And so we could see some law firms implode or go down because they've gotten so fat and so rich. And 2023 may be the year some of those chickens come home to roost.
Yeah. All right. Well, if any of that happens, we will talk about it next year, I hope. And in the meantime, I wish everybody a very happy new year, a very successful and fulfilling 2023. Thanks to all of you. Thanks to all of you for doing this week after week. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Bye all.
Yeah.